Now you're doing 25, you're managing a team, you guys are doing 25 arches a month. What part of that journey was the hardest for you?
I would say early on, the material science wasn't there. I think we didn't really have a lot of understanding about prosthetic space and materials and biomechanics back in 90s and early 2000s.
If you could go back and have a time machine and have you talking to the younger Dr. Frank, what were the things that you were just like, avoid these traps?
I've unwound myself out of a couple bad decisions multiple times. Materials, implant selection, prosthetic space, occlusion, what we tell patients.
Welcome back to another episode of the Full Arch Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more full arches so you can grow the way that you want. And today I have a very, very special episode with Dr. Frank LaMar, who's not only a practicing prosthodontist, but he's also the founder and CEO of Hybridge. And he's going to share his journey on how he got it started in full arch back in 1990, and now how he's managing a team of over 4 people at his office and doing over 25 arches a month, plus helping other dentists implement full arch into their practice. This is an amazing episode. I learned a lot. You're going to learn a lot from this. You're going to want to stay tuned. All right, we are live, and I am super excited for this conversation. This is going to be a little bit longer than our normal format, but it should be because there's a lot of useful information that we're going to be going over today. And I'm super thankful for Dr. Frank because he's going to be transparent with you guys today. And that's something that's not common in the full arch world. And his journey is amazing. So in 1990, he started placing full arch implants and now oversees a team of 4 and is doing over 25 arches a month. And so, Dr. Frank, what I would just like to hear from you is at your practice at Elmwood Dental, when you started in 1990, kind of tell me about your journey of starting and some of the things that you had to kind of work through as a team to get full arch started in your practice all the way back in the 90s.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Hey, great to be here, by the way. I think we have a lot to share. So I would be considered to be the guy who got in early. So 1990 goes back, what is that, 34 years? Yes, sir. Now I'm only 50, so you can do the math. But my first full arch restoration was in my residency, in my pros residency, and made it myself, put it in the mouth, and that's kind of where it started. I would say that between 1990 and the year 2000, I didn't respect the full arch restoration.
You've probably noticed this before, but this podcast is unsponsored. What that means is we don't get paid to do it, but we want to bring you the best information possible. So how do we make sure that this content stays on the air? We need you to like and subscribe. Wherever you're at, whatever you're listening on, just give us a thumbs up or subscribe, and that helps us out so much. I know that you probably haven't done it, so I'm just going to sit here and wait until you do. 95% of our listeners have not subscribed to our podcast. So go ahead and do it now. Don't make this awkward. All right, good. Back to the show.
Very much a conventional implant rehab kind of a guy. And we did a lot of conventional crown and bridge on implants, only to circle back in 2000 and look for an option like today. Everybody's looking for a simplicity and a cost effectiveness and a solution for the masses. So that's kind of actively been doing full arch as my passion in my practice for the last 24, 25 years. So, we were looking.
So your strategy has changed over the years, or your perspective from a clinical standpoint has changed over the years.
That's right.
When I think about general dentists coming into this and starting to place implants and trying to figure this out, I'll just tell you from my perspective, and I'm only a marketing guy, so I'm thinking top of funnel, looking down and in. So you're very much in the weeds and looking up from the whole process. But what I see is a lot of GP practices trying to add full arch right now, and it's just a mess because they don't have all their operations together in the first place, just even for GP. And then they're trying to add something super complex on top, which is full arch. And so what do you kind of see when you're as dentists right now are coming in and coming into this market? what do you see from your perspective that kind of reminds you about the 90s as you got started and you started to change your perspective of full arch and what was going on there?
I think having a clinical process that the office as a team, because this is a team sport in any office, it's from the person who answers the phone, as you know, as a marketing person, to the very last day when the patient high fives you and walks out the door happy. And how do you take them from the call to the happy? And that requires literally everybody in the office to participate in that experience. And at the end of the day, the doctors who are going to continue to elevate and grow over time are going to be the ones that have success. And success is the happy patient. And the same in the practice. If you're not having a lot of success in your practice doing full arch, you're not the only one noticing. Everybody around you is noticing the exact same thing. They're noticing dissatisfied patients. They're noticing stops and goes and lack of flow to a case. But ultimately, the patient satisfaction matters the most. Positive reps, and ultimately, the vibe in the office is we want to continue to do more of these, and we're good at it. And that's the clinical excellence part of it. Doctors who typically struggle because they don't have all of the capabilities at the onset. They don't have all of the clinical skills, maybe. Some doctors have certain strengths. We all have our strengths, right? Somebody might be super strong surgically and weak prosthetically, or vice versa. And not everybody is perfectly well-rounded and has all those capabilities, especially the practices like you're talking about, which are the super GP practices that have doctors who have had a certain experience to date, and they have to fill in the blanks.
Yeah. So now that you've gone from 0, right? And then you're doing 25, you're managing a team, you guys are doing 25 arches a month. What part of that journey was the hardest for you? Like, which parts made you want to quit and say, I don't want to do this anymore?
Man, I got to tell you, the key to success is a bad memory. If you can dust yourself off and come in tomorrow and not worry about what happened to you yesterday, that's one of my unique abilities. I would say early on, the material science wasn't there. I think we didn't really have a lot of understanding about prosthetic space and materials and biomechanics back in 90s and early 2000s. And so what we learned early on, a lot of people doing it today are seeing the advantage of what we've learned. When we teach doctors how to do full arch and we give them the mentoring, we're telling them, do not make these key mistakes that everybody makes. And so being able to avoid those obstacles early on, I think gets that success rate up early. But we had issues with prosthetic failures. Our tagline in the office is a simple way to a lasting smile. A lasting smile is really so important because patients come in there, they typically pay more money than they ever thought that they would ever pay for dentistry. Yeah. And of course, we've all heard it's more than my first house, right? So
that's a good way to put it.
We've all heard that one. But the bottom line is they're making this financial commitment. They expect long-term success.
They expect it all, right? They're paying. That's the one thing that I think the dentist, we do this all the time, right? So I'm very comfortable with talking about how much full arch is. You're comfortable with placing full, because we do it all the time. But the patient doesn't do it all the time. And they never thought in a million years, I don't think anybody was going to spend anywhere near this amount of money on their mouth. So let me ask it this way, because I'm really interested in your opinion. You kind of alluded to this already too. So what are the things that you got wrong that you see everybody getting wrong now? Like, what were the things that you worked through that if you could go back and have a time machine and have you talking to the younger Dr. Frank, what were the things that you were just like, avoid these traps? Boom, 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 boom.
All right. So number one is every time you make a change in in the product, understand that it will have a ripple effect over time. And a lot of times you won't know the negative effects something is going to have until a couple years down the road. So let's say all of a sudden you go, oh, I'm going to do it this way. And now the way you do it, you've got 50 or 100 of these things in the mouth. And then all of a sudden you start to see the impact of that thing a couple years later. I've unwound myself out of a couple bad decisions multiple times. Materials, implant selection, you name it. Prosthetic space, occlusion, what we tell patients.
So in the business world, we call those lagging indicators.
Lagging indicators.
So there's leading indicators and lagging indicators. Leading indicators are amazing for business because there are things that warn you about something before something's happening, either good or bad, and that you can do more or less of that, right? And that's where you really want to be. But there's some things that are lagging indicators, especially when you're new. You usually are operating off of lagging indicators, which means you find out after the fact. After the fact. And if you're finding out 2 years later, that's so hard I can't even imagine being like, oh man, we got to go back and fix all these, or we got to go back and correct all these.
We've been tweaking prosthetic materials for 20 something years. And I could tell you that every time we changed the composition of the prosthetic design, it was to solve a problem that took us a while to figure out. And so as you look at what's going on right now, I personally believe that there's a lot of lagging indicators in this industry right now. And, like a lot of things, the companies are dictating what people are doing. The best marketers of technology and of materials are the ones that are currently being used and put into people's mouths right now. And I don't think that most dentists have the history to realize, well, if I do this now, what's it going to look like down the road? And I do believe the industry is going to build up, is going to percolate with a lot of liability. The thing that came to me, as we said, late was these are big cases. The patients have really high expectations. And although the rewards are big, the potential liabilities are also large. And I think there's a lot of doctors that are out there that if they train well, this is an amazing add-on to their practice. There's no doubt that full arch right now is the thing that this industry is. I mean, you want to talk about practice growth. It's unbelievable. It's a big check. The more big checks you can do, the faster your practice grows. But understand you need a very strong foundation if you want to do it well over time. And I would say that, unless you plan on moving your practice in 3 to 5 years, put down a solid foundation now of clinical excellence, good product, be able to satisfy patients, and then build it incrementally as you build your confidence.
Well, could you walk me through kind of your steps of, and this is great content, by the way, I know the audience is going to love this, all the stuff that you've covered so far, but could you kind of walk me through your steps from a growth standpoint? So many people want to go from like 0 to 10 right away. And it's just like, I don't know if it's going to work quite like that. Walk me through your growth standpoint. So from the 90s to where you're at now, you're at 0, you were doing this many arches a month, and you tweaked these processes, and then you went to this many arches a month. Walk me through that journey.
You want me to really tell you the story, Gary?
Break it down for me.
All right. I'm going to tell you. So I was a referral-based practice up until a certain point, and my girlfriend, now my wife, was a marketer. Karen. Very, very good advertising.
That's a match made in heaven, a dentist and a marketer.
Man, she's the woman behind the man, because she, as I'm talking about full arch when nobody was doing full arch, by the way, and people thought we were out of our minds to take natural dentitions and replace them with implants. she said, you have to talk to the end user, direct to patient marketing, which was taboo, as a lot of people know that have been around long enough. Anyway, we created content. It explained the cycle of failure. We started to market like people like yourself are doing right now. And we hit on a really significant need out there. And so as we started to do direct-to-patient marketing, we did it like I don't know. Actually, do you gamble, Gary?
Don't. I used to a long time ago, but I don't anymore.
All right. So you know what scared money is?
Yes, I know what scared money is.
All right. So the thing about getting things out there into the world is that you don't want to take all your money and put it on
black.
I'll just say, on black, right? And if you show up with $10 and you put it on, you're out of the game early. So the thing that I always believe is that build smart, come out with a strategy that says, if I'm going to market, I need to let people know over a long period of time, and they need to see what we're doing. They need to understand what we're doing, and they need to get an appreciation for it. And they might not, as you know, right? How many times does it take them to see something before they actually acknowledge it?
And that's a great question. And I'll actually say this. Back when you were doing this, no one knew what a dental implant was. People knowing what dental implants are is a fairly new thing. And it actually makes me think of clear aligners is a really good, people really, especially dentists, really understand this. When clear aligners first came out, no one knew what that was. And so Invisalign actually had to market in clear aligners to educate the market, to help the doctors just be able to get the patients. And the hardest thing to market in the world is something that somebody doesn't know what it is, because you have to educate. It's education. So it's at that point, it's actually, there's a rule. It's like people have to hear things 14 times before they buy from you. But it's actually, for education, it's way more than that, because it's actually getting them to understand what in the world you're talking about and why they should care about it. And it's right. Really, really hard. It's one of the hardest things in marketing to do. So you were like way ahead of way ahead of your time.
We actually educated our market on what implants were and what full arch was. And yes, today it's a lot easier because people now their IQ is much higher. But we went into it with, hey, let's spend this much. Let's get good at this much. Then let's knock it up a notch.
Just give me like how much when you got started. I know this back then it was a totally different ballgame, but
I would say it was $5,000 to $7,000 a month at the time. It goes back 20-something years.
So that's probably worth it today's money. That's probably like $50,000 with inflation. I'm just playing.
I'm not that old.
I'm playing.
But if you think about it, you get a response out of, if we're talking marketing, if you're building your practice, it's get a response, don't screw it up, don't drop the ball, make sure you maximize, because you're testing everything. You're testing your system from who's answering the phone. Are they converting that phone call to an appointment? Are you as a doctor converting the appointment to a start, and so on? And then can you finish that case and make them happy before you repeat it all over again? And so my advice is always confirm that you can go through that whole cycle and then turn up the volume. Because the other thing that I find people, their processes are not solid, not only on the admin side, but on the clinical side. That there's a way to do full arch. The one thing that I have always been a proponent of is create SOPs for every clinical procedure you do. And full arch is a sequence, and you need to really, really have the office know what step 1, 2, 3, and 4 is, know how to schedule it, make sure everybody knows what's going on, in a lot of practices, it takes a while to develop a rhythm to these cases. Once you develop the rhythm and everybody kind of knows, okay, this is how it goes, and this is how many weeks between step 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and so on, then your investment into the market, if we're talking marketing, will be better dollars in for more dollars out, or less dollars in for more dollars out. And I think that that's something that I've seen folks go all in and they didn't have their processes set and they were out. They were scared money. They were gone.
And some people all in for them might be $10,000 a month because that's their profit of their business. And they're just like, yeah, I'm just going to knock this out of the park. They don't especially from GP, they don't realize that full arch is binary, meaning you either win or you lose. There are no base hits in full arch. Like there's no base hits. It's either a home run or you strike out. And then the other thing I've seen is that they'll actually get the arches coming in, but then they don't know how to optimize for cost and actually do a good job and make money off of this. So they're like, yeah, we did 3 arches. I've seen this recently. We did 3 arches this month and we added, $60,000 to our practice, which was huge for them, but we lost money. We lost money after everything was done and said. So it's not like GP where it's like, I'm going to make my money back in the future over time as these people refer patients and they come back in and all those kind of things. It doesn't work that way. You make money on that one patient or you don't. And you either get the patient to say yes or they don't. So it's very binary. Now, one of the things that I love about your journey is you didn't just stop there. So you didn't just say, you know what, I'm going to do these arches. I'm going to help people and I'm going to knock it out of the park. I'm actually going, you at some point you said, this is something that other people need. And you created another company to help other dentists. So when was that in your journey? And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks. So back when we created our direct-to-consumer marketing, and we spent a lot of money doing that, and we were the only practice using it. Well, I have a very good friend of mine, Dr. Ronald Sambursky, who was a co-resident of mine in a town in upstate New York, and he said, "What are you doing?" I kind of told him what I was doing with full arch. Nobody knew what full arch was at the time. And he goes, "Oh, it's the teeth in an hour, teeth in a day and whatever." And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "How many of those have you done this year?" And I told him, and I said, "How many have you done?" And he said like 1 or almost 2. So he was our first, we'll call it Hybridge doctor. And the business was created based on sharing it with my friends. So we actually shared our capability. We shared our marketing. As I like to say, I shared my wife, Karen, with him because she did the marketing for him in his market. And my laboratory that we were starting did his work. And all of a sudden, boom, in his market, he was doing 10x what he was doing, and his practice was growing. And we kind of said, well, I think we're onto something here. And so that was 15, 17 years ago. We've trained hundreds of doctors on the clinical protocols, but we've always looked at it as sharing capabilities. And the education of how to do things prosthetically, surgically, everybody needs that. I don't care if you think you're an intermediate or advanced, everybody, including myself, we keep getting better. If you think you're already there, trust me, you're never there. But we call that leveling up. And the other thing is that we share the laboratory. Now, I think a lot of people assume that, a full arch restoration is a full arch restoration. If I knew 10, 15, 20 years ago what I know today, I would have saved myself a lot of issues. But I can tell you that materials matter when it comes to full arch. And there are a lot of doctors that, you talked about losing on the financial side of full arch because of expenses and all that. The other thing doctors lose is sleep. Like doctors lose sleep on these cases all the time. Matter of fact, I guarantee whoever's listening right this second knows exactly what I'm talking about. They're up all night. They're worried about whatever the patient is, whatever the complaint is, whatever. The materials dictate 80% of those complaints. 80% of those problems that patients have are materials based. And so sharing the capabilities and the knowledge that we have about how to make a good restoration that is modifiable and adjustable, that feels good in the mouth, is something that I think a lot of doctors would appreciate.
Hey, thanks so much for joining me for episode 1. I learned so much from Dr. Frank, and I'm really excited for episode number 2. So be on the watch out for that. He's going to be jump into how he built Hybridge and how he helps other dentists accomplish what he's already done. Stay tuned.